this early estimate can be really, really, really important. And anybody can do it. So here's some tips that I would suggest that you consider. First, when a student has a real keen interest in an institution, maybe it's an early decision interest or just I just have to be there. Maybe the school doesn't provide early decision, but mom and dad continue to squirm about, well, can we really afford this? Here's what you do. Ask the financial aid office at that institution to provide this early estimate. If you provide your most recent tax return, they can do it. And here's the deal. Even in the age of coronavirus, you can send them that tax return and then arrange for a Zoom conference meeting. And during the Zoom conference meeting, the financial aid officer will say, we've looked at your tax return, and based on everything that we've seen here, here is your expected family contribution. And they'll give you a number. Now, what you need to recognize here is that, especially if this is a private college, they could be practicing differential need analysis. They may have access to both the FAFSA and to the College Scholarship Service profile and trying to project your needs. So the question you ask is, that's very nice. Which methodology did you use to arrive at this number? Now they might blanch a little bit because you're asking questions that you're not supposed to be asking, according to them. They'll look at the number and they'll say, well, this was the FAFSA. Then the next question you ask is, when my son is admitted, which methodology will you use then? Now you're really putting them on the spot because you're forcing them to acknowledge that maybe they have different methodologies. And what will likely come from this is that they'll say, well, we might use the profile and may I see that number? So now you've gotten a best case, worst case scenario from the institution about your expected family contribution. The next question you ask is, that's very nice. Can you tell us what the total cost of attendance will be? Now, you will probably be able to recite tuition, room, and board for most institutions. What you can't recite is the total cost of attendance, which will have other variables included, lab fees, social fees, travel expenses, and that sort of a thing. And I would add that this year, in the year of COVID-19, that there could be a differential pricing scale available at institutions to reflect whether the student is taking classes on campus, off campus, remotely, whether they've changed the calendar at all. So you want to know specifically what the cost will be for the kind of instructional opportunity your student will have. So now you've got total cost of attendance, and you've got the best case and worst case scenario, and neither of them, in terms of your expected family contribution, and neither of them reaches total cost of attendance. Then you ask, well, could you show us how you would help meet that differential? In other words, if there's a difference between what we can afford and the total cost, how are you going to help us? Now, the financial aid officer might say, well, we don't know. You haven't even been admitted yet. Now it's important for mom and dad to maintain composure and say, I know. But surely you have a template that you use to reveal this, that would reveal this kind of information. How have you treated students like this in the past? You know what? They have such a template, and if you ask, they're obligated to share it with you. Now you see a sample financial aid award that will have maybe scholarship, maybe grant, maybe loan, maybe a work study opportunity. Oh, did I say loan? The next question you ask is this. I see that there's a loan on this. It looks like maybe a guaranteed student loan for $3,500. Can you tell us what the loan expectations will be for years 2, 3, and 4? Now, the math that you're doing in your head is, well, $3,500 guaranteed student loan times 4 years, that's $14,000. That's not too bad. The reality is that your student's eligibility for guaranteed student loans will increase each year, so that the last couple of years, she could be borrowing $8,500 each year. The total debt for a student coming out of school in 4 years could be in the neighborhood of $25,000 to $28,000, which in the minds of a lot of people in education is not horrible. It's an amount that can be serviced by a first year salary of a student out of college. But things get out of hand when that debt gets to be $50,000, $75,000, and $100,000. And when you start to hear numbers like that, you need to push back, because that's just not reasonable. So at the end of this conversation, if mom and dad, you're happy with what you've gotten in terms of data, the numbers match up with what you think you can do, and you're pleased with the way you've been treated, then you can move forward in supporting your student's application for early decision or a commitment otherwise, knowing that this is something you can manage. If, however, you're not happy with the numbers, they just don't look right or feel right, and you don't feel like you've been treated very well in this process, and maybe the financial aid office has been kind of gruff or disinterested, um, I would say early decisions off the table because it's not going to get any better. In that particular instance, when you're asking for the early estimate, they are in sales mode. They should be doing what they can to try to accommodate you, make you feel good about process. And if that's not happening, it's not going to get better any other time. But I strongly urge families to consider getting an early estimate of that expected family contribution before going down the road of committing, of having the student commit to a school, early decision or otherwise.